Go ahead, punk. Make me play.
This is Bumping Into That Sound.
Welcome to Bumping Into That Sound, the rock-centric music and tone podcast where we dive deep into the riffs, rhythms and stories behind your favourite artists, tracks and instruments. My name is Francis and I'm your host. Whether you're a classic rock enthusiast or just discovering the magic of it for the first time, we've got you covered. Each episode, we explore the story behind the sounds, the people and the equipment. For those that don't know, Bumping Into That Sound is part of the Bumping Into family of podcasts. The idea behind Bumping Into is long-form conversations across a wide range of topics. If you're into more than just music, head over to bumpinginto.com.au or search Bumping Into on your podcast player. And for those just chasing music and tone, you're on the right channel here at Bumping Into That Sound. There's also a website for each of those show names. Just remember to add the .com.au on the end. Speaking of the website, if you're wanting to find out more about anything you may have heard on this episode, head to the website or check the show notes. There's most often links relating to the guest. Today we're joined by a guitarist whose playing is as dynamic and precise as it is soulful. From catching the attention of the legendary Tommy Emmanuel to touring the world with Pete Murray and laying down some of the best hard rock riffs with Electric Mary, may I introduce you to Brett Wood. Brett's journey through music has been anything but ordinary. Whether it's blues, rock or something in between, he brings a signature style that's both powerful and always heartfelt. In this episode, we'll talk about his early days as a guitarist, his time on the road, and some of the equipment that makes up his signature sounds, which for me, as a huge Electric Mary fan, is something very exciting. Plus, we'll get into his new solo material and the current single Real Piece of Work, along with the forthcoming album and some very personal insights from one of Australia's best guitarists. I was lucky enough to spend a couple of hours with Brett a few days before he was about to hit the MCG and play in front of over 90,000 people as part of the pre-Anzac Game entertainment show with Pete Murray. So let's get straight into my conversation with Brett Wood. I'd love to do, if you're up for it, is go to the beginning and work our way through the timeline. So I thought if we start at the beginning and talk about, I suppose, transitioning from basketballer to guitarist.
Yeah. I think that, I remember, I got interested in music because of the show The Wonder Years on TV, that show.
Oh, yeah, they had the Joe Cocker song at the start of it.
Joe Cocker song. He had an episode where he played he had to get classical piano lessons and that he had to learn and play at the recital was Pachelbel's Canon in D, which is a really pretty, you hear it at weddings or you hear it in corporate events. So it's a really beautiful melody. And I was kind of really taken by it. And so I wanted to get a keyboard. So mum and dad got me a keyboard, like a little Casio or Korg kind of keyboard thing. Yeah. And I'm plonking away going dun, 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 with two fingers and trying to find notes and play, simple songs and stuff. And it was on my mum's birthday. One of the family friends was there and heard me kind of tapping away in the bedroom on the piano. And he came in and heard the song that I was playing was dun, 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 that whatever that thing is from the Tom Hanks movie. I think it's called Adolescence.
Yeah, where they're in the toy shop.
Yeah, in the toy shop where he's running on the keyboard. I'm there trying to play it with two index fingers. And this guy, his name was Kevin Sidebottom, and he was into cars and, friends with my mum and dad. And my dad's a car guy. And anyway, he came into the room and started playing the two-handed part with all of his fingers, like the dun 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 and the melody on top. And I was like, what?
Oh, wow.
And my brain split in two, and I was like, I didn't know you could do all that with one pair of hands. I'd never seen anyone do anything like that.
Yeah, wow.
And he said, well, you like that? You should check this out. And he went out to the car and he came back in, like he literally went straight out to the car. He's like, oh, this kid likes music. So he brought in a steel string acoustic guitar and started playing House of the Rising Sun on like chords and finger picking,
Yep.
And I was like, oh, you got to show me how to do that. What's that? And then he handed me the guitar and he was about to start showing me chords and I flipped it over the wrong way. And he's like, oh, you're not left-handed, are you? And I went, yeah, I am actually. Well, I shoot a basketball right-handed and I kick a footy with my left foot and I swing a golf club right-handed. I'm a bit of everything, right? And he just went, oh, okay. Well, what hand do you write with? And I said, my left hand. And he said, okay. And so he went out to the car again and he brought in this beaten up old nylon string that had a massive wood screw through the heel of the neck. That, he goes, oh, I saved it from a campfire and it snapped the neck off. So I just wood screwed it through and put a bit of glue. And he took all the strings off and restrung it for me. So my first guitar lesson was, here's how you take all the strings off a classical guitar
Jeez.
and unravel them and redo it for a lefty. And he knocked the nut out with a butter knife, the nut for the strings at the headstock, and he turned it around so he could. And so my very first lesson was, here's how you restring a guitar. Here's how you knock a little piece out of it without breaking it. Like I learned like guitar tech stuff in my first lesson.
Jeez.
And then he showed me those 6 chords and I was away and I can't even, I blink now and it's been 30 something years, 31 years since that day. So that's the
Wow.
start. That's the beginning. And it was House of the Rising Sun that was my first. And so he showed me this. Like he said, okay, so what you got to do is you learn where to put your fingers, and he drew these pictures out for me, just like you see in any good tablature. But he said you take your thumb and your first 3 fingers and you go, and it sounds like nothing else matters.
Yeah.
But he said, do that, and you can do it loud and you can do it soft, and he said, do it soft so that you don't annoy your mum and dad. So I was like, okay, just hardly touching the strings. And he said, and so he taught me dynamics. In the first lesson, I learned dynamics,
Wow. Geez, that's a big first lesson to
It
take
was
in.
crazy. Yeah. It was just like, yeah, my mind exploded and I was like, wow, what is this? And that was kind of me hooked on guitar from that first interaction with Kevin. And so my little basketball brain went, okay, we'll put the basketball here for now. And then we'll just do this for a bit. And it was kind of a bit of an argy-bargy for, I was 13 and a half, I think, at the time, or 14 or something. And I was already a pretty promising young basketballer, playing A grade on Saturdays and Friday nights, starting to play rep ball. And I was kind of really into it, and 3 training sessions a week, 3 teams a week.
Wow. And
Yeah.
then when was it? How old were you when you thought I'm going to make a career out of this?
That's a good question. I think mum and dad were very quick to try and get me into a teaching career because dad's a fiery, my old man's a firefighter, retired now. He's 42 years in the Metropolitan Fire Brigade down here. And mum's a kindergarten teacher who's also retired now. So they're not necessarily musical, although they've got great taste in music, but they don't play instruments and stuff. But yeah, so because they didn't really know what to do with me, they kind of, I was right into Tommy Emmanuel's music. Once I started playing guitar, I got right into, there was a record Tommy had called Up From Down Under, and Determination was big at the time. I think they were both made in the 80s, and I started picking up the guitar in the 90s. So those albums had been out for a little while, but they were the ones I gravitated to when I went to the CD shop. For some reason, I grabbed them, and Determination had this really cool smoky color, and Tommy was like leaning up with the Telecaster. I'm like, that looks cool. And so I'd get that, and so I love those records so much that I made mum and dad take me to see any Tommy gig I get to. And I used to write him letters. I wrote to his little fan club. I paid like the $20 membership fee or whatever it was.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
they send you out a little signed photo, a little press shot, and with a little signature on it. And
That's cool.
yeah, and as soon as I knew that he was getting my letters, I just started barraging the poor guy with letter after letter after letter. Where do you get your straps from? And how do you do this? And what's that amplifier? And I don't know. Well, what about this sound? And so I was so hooked on it that he ended up calling the house one time to answer my questions because I'd put my phone number in one of the letters.
Wow. Geez, how
Yeah.
nice is that?
Oh, he's the best. And I think against the advice of his then wife at the time was kind of like, you can't just be calling fans up, or you can't just be, and he was just going, yeah, I know, but I'm busy. And I don't know what his thinking was. I think he just resonated with the fact that I was just so,
So into it.
I just wanted to know everything,
Yeah.
And he called the house, and I wasn't there. I was at school. So dad walked down to school. This is probably when I was like 15, so I'd only been playing the guitar about 18 months or 2 years or something.
Right.
And he came down to school at lunchtime and said, hey, don't dilly daddle after school and jam with your friends, because sometimes I went to school with Shannon Bourne, who's an amazing guitar player. He used to play with Chris Wilson before, bless him, before Chris passed. Um, and now he's in Checkerboard Lounge and plays with every, he's a great session man, and he's got his own solo career, and he's a killer. And he and I were at the same school together. So sometimes I'd go to Shannon's after school and jam, and we'd listen to Gary Moore records and Stevie records and Hendrix records. And, he loved Peter Green from Fleetwood Mac. And so he kind of helped me cut my teeth on a lot of old blues music.
Oh, right.
So thank you, Shannon, for that. And Dad was like, don't go to Shannon's after school, or don't muck around. Don't go play basketball because Tommy's going to call. And I'm like, what? And he goes, yeah, he just called the house. And I'm like, Tommy who? Tommy Emmanuel. And he goes, yeah, Tommy Emmanuel. I go, no kidding. And so I was the next 2 or 3 periods at school, I was like chomping at the bit to just get the hell out of there.
Yeah,
and
just get home.
And then lo and behold, 4 o'clock, he rang. He goes, hey, is this Woody? I was like, what a cool guy. So yeah, he's been a friend ever since, and I'm super lucky. But I think the first time I got up on stage and played with him, which wasn't too long after that, because I think the next dot connect that happened with Tommy and I was actually he invited me to a CD launch. Like, I went to Albury to see one of my other dear mates, Jai Forster, who lived in Albury, and we met through basketball, connected through music, and Jai had gotten me surprise front row seats at a Tommy and Rick Price concert or something. It was like Together and Alone, and we're sitting up the front. And Tommy and I had met one time before that at another acoustic gig that Tommy was doing. And he remembered me, saw me in the front row, and he goes, oh, ladies and gentlemen, friend of mine from Melbourne's come all the way up to see me tonight. His name's Brett Wood. He's a young guitarist. And I'm sitting there going, what the hell? He sort of singled me out and thanked me for coming all the way to Albury, catching the train. And
wow,
it was wild. And so I saw him after the show, and he was doing his signings and stuff. And I was like, you didn't have to say my name. And he goes, no, I really appreciate you getting the train. And he goes, here, like, I'm gonna give you a phone number to call. And he gave me this little bit of paper that had all this info on it and the date for the CD launch for Classical Gas when he was putting that record out. And so that was, I think that must have been around 96. I reckon I'd been playing guitar for about 3 years. We went there, my dad and I went there, and it was all the record label people and TV people and people walking around with, it's a corporate event, it's a CD launch, an official corporate CD launch. And it was a bit hoity for a kid from Greensboro and a fireman. and at the end of it, he sort of nodded and saw that Dad and I were there and went, and he had to do the rounds and talk to all the people, but he kind of gave us the nod to say, oh, I'm coming, just give us give us a few minutes. And we waited for him to do the rounds through the room. And at the end of the night, when he was packing up his stuff, he called us over, and he handed me his acoustic, and I turned it over upside down and started playing it upside down. And he goes, is that how you play? And I was like, no, I can play way more stuff the right way, the left way around. and he goes, oh, okay. And he's like, how many of my songs do you know? And I'm like, most of them. And because he heard me noodling upside down, he goes, you want to come and play tomorrow night? You want to sit in with the band? And so he invited me to go and get up on stage and bring my rig to a gig in Frankston and gate crash the band for a couple songs.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. What an experience and I think that was the night that I went, I remember saying to Simon Hosford, he goes, how'd you go, mate? You carved it up. The other guitar player in his band, Hossy, who's awesome. And I said, yeah, man, I want to do this. That's what I said to Hossy.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Path set.
That's it. 16 years old. So all the work, what do they call them at school? Like your career advisor meetings.
Oh, those career counselors and all that.
Yeah, it was just such a waste of their time talking to me. I was like, no, I'm just playing music.
And they're probably like, what about this? What about that? And you're like,
you can do graphic design. You do a lot of artsy stuff. You could do. I was like, yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah.
What an act of kindness set up a whole path of your life. What an amazing thing for him to do.
Oh, mate. Yeah, he was like a big brother that I never had. I've got a little sister who's awesome. But yeah, and I've got a dad who's awesome. They're about the same age, I think. I think Tommy turns 70 this year.
Wow. And
my dad's a couple of years or a year, or maybe a year older than him, I think. Or maybe they're about the same. I think they're born in the same year, 55. Anyway, yeah, I've always looked up to him like a big brother,
Yeah, geez, that's amazing. That's such a kind gesture that he didn't have to do, and that
No,
just was had so much of an impact on you.
absolutely. To this day, yeah, and to this day, like he's always full of incredible stories and great advice and positivity, and he's very much he's a very much a positive terminal.
And then how long after that all happened until like your first, you know, band or your first professional gig, like when it was like, okay, now I'm on the road.
Yeah, well, it wasn't touring work straight up. It was more corporate covers work. I joined a band called Deja Vu, that mates of mine who I still are connected to, even though we don't see each other all the time, still to this day. Like it was run by a singer named Anthony J, who was cool and supportive and encouraging. And I took over from a guitar player, really well respected Melbourne guitar player named Fred Leduc, who's got his own instrumental records and stuff. And I loved those records. So, oh wow, I'm going to join a band that Fred was in, and that was when I was about 18 or 19, and playing gigs around Melbourne at corporate events and stuff like that.
Wow.
And
Okay.
it was kind of a foyer into, hey, we've got to do a photo shoot and everyone's got to wear crushed velvet suits and we've got to, going to do our hair like this. And I'm like, oh, really? Okay. All right, do a little bit of that. And cheesy or not cheesy at the time, it's like, oh, this is what you do to promote something. Okay, cool. I guess we do that. And you do a video package, and it helps you get work and this, that, and the other. And um, one of my dear mates, Marcus Ryan on drums, was in that band, and he's worked on my record. Um, and I did a solo record, an instrumental guitar record with Marcus on drums and the bass player from that band, John Castle, who's an amazing producer and musician in his own right. Right back in that period when I was 19, like when I joined that band, I was like, oh, these guys have a studio. Oh, that's cool. I got these songs because Tommy was always encouraging me to write. He was always going, what have you written? Play me something. What else are you writing? Every time he'd see me, you got a new one? Got another song? Every single time
Oh,
I'd catch up
wow.
with him, play me a new one. What have you got? I'd either have it on a cassette tape in the car if I picked him up and dropped him off somewhere or whatever, or he'd want to hear it on a guitar if we were going to get up and have a play on stage. He'd want to hear whatever songs I'd been creating. It was always, hey, you got a new song? What else have you been playing? What have you been working on? Always checking in on that stuff. So I had a little
Jeez.
solo record called Turn It Up. And that was when I was 19, and that's what began the touring life, was because once I funded my own solo record, put it out, and started going out and doing little acoustic gigs to try and sell it to people. It wasn't too long after that somebody passed. I think Ron Lee, Tommy's old manager, passed my album on to a country artist, country duo named Carter and Carter, David and Marilyn Carter, who are like, they're like family to me musically. Like they took me under their wing and then took me out on the road, and I started playing country shows with them.
Oh,
Yeah, and
right.
it came out. It was born out of the fact that there was a record. I'd made this CD, and they heard the CD, and they went, "Oh, does he sing?" And Ron said, "I think he sings a little bit." And and I started doing live work, touring, promoting their music, and it spawned recording sessions. I started doing recording sessions and learning what the ropes were, learning the ropes for doing that, showing up and making sure your strings were fresh, making sure your guitars were set up properly, making sure your gear didn't hum. Sometimes learning the hard way because I'd show up and my gear would have a bit of noise in it, and this
Oh,
engineer
geez.
would make a comment, and I'm like, oh no.
What do you do when that happens? Like it's all panic stations because it's in the moment.
Yeah, well, you try not to, especially in a recording setting. Even, and I was instinctively aware of this. I don't know why, but I was instinctively aware that you can't go to panic stations because people are using time and money to record stuff. So you want to try and keep you cool and just go, oh, sorry, maybe there's just a loose cable or something, and you start jiggling things, or I'd unplug. Have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Like unplug the power supply, or and sometimes it was a lesson of like, oh, okay, I guess I need a noiseless strat for for some sessions, because you would go into, even back then, even in the early 2000s, there was a lot of home studios springing up,
Oh, okay.
it wasn't always going into like a big major recording studio. Sometimes, most of the time for me, it was going into backyard studios or studios in people's houses with varying levels of hum within their electronics, with
Yeah.
the power at the house and stuff. So yeah, you learn pretty quick to, have your gear together.
Yeah. And what, so after you've done the bit of touring, you've done the studio stuff,
Uh-huh.
then how long until you ended up in Electric Mary?
Electric Mary came after I'd been on the road with Pete Murray for a while, and
Oh, so Pete Murray was first.
that's right, yeah. So
Wow.
I started doing a little bit of the session scene thing in country music, and I was down the run on the ladder of the most important session guitar players in the Aussie country scene, but I was mates with all the guys that were above me, and I respected them to death, and still do to this day. Guys like Stewie French and Glenn Hanna, bless him, my old mate, and yeah, I sort of did a lot of that stuff, and then picked up some music theater work, and anything that was going around that friends in the scene would go, "Hey Brett, you'd be perfect for this show," and I was
Right.
just trying to make a living, and then I was probably getting a little bit disenchanted with the way I was going, the opportunities that were being put in front of me. I was trying to figure out what might be next and what I'd really like to do, and a buddy of mine, Ben Edgar, who's one of the best guitar players I know. Um, was had picked up a gig working with Missy Higgins at the time, and I was like, man, that looks like a fun thing to do, to get out and play some shows to some big fan bases, and just that looks like fun. And an opportunity came up to audition for Pete around about 2007. I think it might have been 2007, 2008 maybe. And it was very last minute. The drummer from the band was a friend of mine, Andy Silvio, who is still works with me to this day, and he and I are really good buddies. And he called me while I was in Sydney, leaving a theatre show that I'd just done a pit gig in, and sort of said, "Hey man, I'm really sorry. I didn't think to recommend you to Pete." I went, "Pete who? Pete Murray?" Because I knew he played with Pete, and he goes, "Yeah, yeah. The other guitar player's leaving to go and play in his rock and roll band, or hard rock band, Mammal." And that
Oh,
was Pete Williamson, who's a killer player and good dude. And he wanted to go and do that for a while, and or do that. He just wanted to change, or maybe some opportunities had come up with that band, and there was clashes or something. I don't know. And so an opportunity came up to audition, and it was last minute. I showed up the next morning. I flew back from Sydney down to Melbourne, and auditioned. Didn't have the best audition because I didn't have a lot of time to learn the stuff. And
oh,
I cut my own audition short because Pete, bless him, he's a patient. He's really patient, and he just wanted to keep doing a song that I hadn't really had the chance to learn properly again. Just let's do it again because you might play it better next time. And I just sort of put my hand up and said, "Hey, I've actually got a mental blank." Um, and this is after we'd played half an hour or so together as a band, and I just said, if you guys want to go grab a quick coffee, I'll stick the headphones on and I'll learn that song properly now and get it into the front of my brain, because it's just not, I'm just coming up negative on everything at the moment. It's not, and it was the simplest thing. It was like, this is what I couldn't remember, right? I couldn't remember this. And it's because it was the lick from the brand new single that hadn't been released yet. So I hadn't heard it before, like that morning. Like I was like
ah.
learning it in the car on the way to the rehearsal room.
So you just
And
had to get your groove on, really. You just,
yeah, and
yeah,
all
yeah.
of the other songs were songs that I'd heard on the radio, and like songs that was like, oh yeah, I know that one, and I just had to learn the parts, right?
Ah,
But so when I did that, and I thought they'll have a breather and go, maybe the boys, if they smoke, will go for a smoke and come back in, and Pete just put his guitar down, and I was like, oh no, I've killed it. He just sort of casually just went, oh, okay, well, if you're not going to get it, no worries. And I was like, oh no. And so I made a point of going up and saying, look, man, I'm totally cool to quickly learn it. And he goes, no, it's okay. That was fine. We've heard you. And I'm like, okay, cool. And I thought, oh, I might not have got this, maybe it didn't work out. And then a week later, it was, yeah, I got the phone call to say, mate, we're going overseas. We're about to do however many shows in Europe. If you want to come along and do it, we'd love to have you. And I was like, hallelujah. It was what I wanted.
Jeez.
I wanted to change. I wanted to do something new. I really, really wanted that gig, and I was chuffed to get the opportunity to do it, man. So that was 2007 or 8 or something.
I mean, how good's that that you didn't feel that you put your best foot forward and
Mm.
the stars still lined up and it came back your way?
I was very grateful that Pete saw something that had potential, because he was really honest about it. He said, you didn't have the best audition out of everybody. And I was like, okay. And I'm like, he said, but straight away we went to the positive. He said, but you had the least amount of time from everybody, whereas everybody else that went for the gig had 3 weeks or 2 weeks to
Oh, wow. So you only
learn the
had
stuff.
hours.
He said, mate, you found out about this last night, flew down for it, and had probably a minimum of 5 or 6 hours to go through the 8 or 9 songs. And I was like, yeah, something like that, mate. And he goes, well, I saw that had a lot of potential. He said, I knew I hadn't seen everything from you yet, and I was keen. I think if I remember correctly, he was saying I was keen to see what else there was, which I thought
But
was really, really kind and really, and just I was just I was just chuffed. I was like, oh, sick, man, let's do it, let's go.
but sometimes you can feel that something's going to be right
Yeah,
when you're with other people. You can tell it doesn't need to be perfect in the moment, but you can tell that it's got enough perfect in the background that's going to bring it together and work.
yeah, man, yeah. You get a feeling for it. I think BB King said something that was really powerful about musicians that you might want to choose to work with. Was like he could deal with 70%. Don't quote me on this though. It was something like he could deal with 70% of the musician. I think I heard this from a Joe Bonamassa interview. Um, it was something like I can work with 70% of the musician if I get 100% of the human,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. And I was like, so maybe there was a little bit of that. Maybe he resonated a little bit with, because I went up to him at the end of the audition and said, man, whatever you want me to play, like if you want me to play Gibson's Standing on My Head, I'll, whatever you want, whatever amps you want me to use. Actually, we actually had a cool chat about gear, which I was like, I respected him straight away because he was like really quick to go, hey man, I normally prefer Gibson, like he likes, if you listen to those early Pete records, there's some really nice earthy like old Gibson humbucker and big bodied Gibsons like jazz type guitars
Oh,
played
okay.
through Fender amps that are just on the edge of breakup, like old Fender amps that might be turned up to 4.5 or 5. And if you're just playing them nice and gently, they'll just start to get a little bit of hair on them, but it's not clean.
Yeah, yep.
And he said, that's what I normally go for. And I'm like, dude, Freddie King, BB King, like you're talking my language, like you're talking, blues guys love that combo, like a Fender amp turned up a bit with a Gibson guitar. I was like, man. And at the time I was endorsed with Fender, but I said, I'll figure something out. And I think I went and got a Jazz Master or a Jaguar. And I had my mate Paul Gale route the body out and we put humbuckers in it,
Oh,
so that it
wow.
kind of crossed. So it didn't upset my endorsement, but it kind of crossed. It gave me, and you know what? That I think I ended up. I've sold that guitar, which I shouldn't have done because it sounded like an old Burst. Like
Oh,
it
geez.
sounded like a '59 Les Paul and looked like Kurt Cobain's guitar. It was bizarre. But yeah, man. So yeah,
Oh, wow.
I was chomping at the bit to do anything I could to get that job.
So you straight off to Europe. So is that the first time then as a proper big tour? Off we go, another country, turning up, who knows where.
Yeah, the first gig was Rove. We did a performance, a live performance to air, which was pretty scary. So the first gig that I ever did, we rehearsed for an afternoon on the new single that I forgot during the audition. It's a song called "You Pick Me Up," and we played that on Rove. And
Oh,
then I think it might have been the day or two after that we were flying to Europe to play. Yeah, I think we started in Ireland and played the Olympia Theatre. Was my first full set that I ever played with Pete Murray. Was in Ireland at this beautiful old ancient, looks like an old Gothic theatre from I don't know how long ago. It's beautiful, such a nice room.
and is it
Yeah.
still very much like the gear that you take on the road for that, or the backline you end up getting? Is it still that same formula where you've just got humbuckers with a
Mm.
Fender amp? Is that pretty much what you take?
In more recent times, he's Pete, and like I'm a Strat guy. Like I love my single coils. That's where I'm at most at home, getting sounds and stuff. But so more recently, I've been traveling with a Strat and a Gretsch, actually, a Gretsch that's
Okay.
it's not a vintage one, but it's got vintage pickups in it, so I kind of get the aroma of a vintage Gretsch when I hear
Yeah.
it coming out of the amp. But the actual guitar itself is like one of the Japanese 2000. It's like a big orange Brian Setzer looking Gretsch. I love it.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, I mean, if Pete could, like when we first started touring as well, like Pete and I both had our own guitar racks. Like he would bring out maybe three or four old electrics, like old Guild Starfires, and I think he used to bring out the big Gibson with the moon-shaped cutaway, looked like George Benson's guitar. I forget what they're called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can't remember the model name, but yeah, he would have a handful of electrics and a handful of acoustics, and then it looked like a little guitar world, you know, two racks going off in an L shape. And our old guitar tech Iceman used to have to, you know, finish his dinner early or quick because he had guitars to go and restring and tune them up. And, you know, he had a hard gig on that first run there because it was like, yeah, bring whatever you want. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But things have changed a little bit now with traveling because it's just too expensive, excess baggage and stuff. So now I'm often in a zipped bag, which is pretty frightening. Just you know, like
Oh,
one of those
geez.
mono guitar backpacks with a couple of guitars, you know, piggybacked inside there.
Oh, and cross your fingers and hope nothing happens.
Yeah, or try not to
Yeah.
think about it. Yeah, just get on with it. You know.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
Yeah,
So then so that's been a long-standing relationship, you and Pete Murray. So
yeah.
that's obviously, goes back a long way, and I'm guessing there's still a lot more there to come as well.
I think so. Yeah. Well, we're just about to go out on the. Well, I know so because we're just about to go out and do 65 dates around Australia, and we're starting in New Zealand. We're doing 4 shows in New Zealand, and but this time is a little different because I get to do my own set supporting his stuff. So this is the first time I'll be able to, you know, take the stage without him there with me,
Yeah.
and do the music that I've made, which is really exciting. You know.
So is that going to be you going to have a band for your set?
No, we're both going hippie sticks only.
Wow. Okay.
Just acoustic. Well, you know what? I might take a bag of electrics, like the double bag of the electrics, just for some coloring in, because he might grab me out. I'll join Pete maybe for the back end of his solo set. So he'll do a whole bunch of his own storytelling and his own solo songs, and then I'll jump on at certain points later on. So I'll have a couple of things just to paint some colors around his stuff, you know. So
Yeah.
but it's no band. There'll be no drums and no bass, and it's just a songwriter's night. So it's pretty stripped back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jeez.
yeah, scary.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, so
No
I
margin
got
of error.
I got some timber and some strings and my ideas. Hope you like
Yeah.
them.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And then so 2007, 2008, you're with Pete Murray. When was the year that you jumped on with Electric Mary?
That Electric Mary journey began in 2012, I think. And I thought, you know what, I'd love to go and, you know, I'm going to go crank up some amps and play some different music. Maybe that'll be a good thing for me to do, just have a change and do something different. And but ultimately, it's been a blessing to be in both of those musical experiences. I got to be honest, as it's almost like night and day stylistically. But for me as a player, to have the camaraderie with a band and get to know these other humans, like you can't fake a decade or more with any musical situation, whether it's working for an artist or in a group situation where there's 5 equal members of a unit. Um, it's a pretty special thing to be able to put a rear view mirror up to it and go, wow, it's a lot of time. That's a lot of water under the bridge in both of those projects.
Yeah.
A lot of life lessons, a lot of human lessons, and um, totally different styles of touring, which is probably another blessing, really, because um, wherever Pete's, however you call it, the echelon of Pete's career and the way he goes about, getting around for things, and it's a lot of flying, a lot of fly dates, and a lot of fly in, do a show, fly out. Whereas with Electric Mary, we'll go to Europe and get a van
Yeah.
and then throw all the gear in the back of the van, get a bag of potato chips and hit the road. It's like a
Old school rock
different
and roll.
old school van life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's cool.
it's the best of both worlds, to be honest.
And how did you find them, or how did they find you? Like, was there an event that brought you two, you and the band together?
I'd known about Electric Mary as a fan. I'd been a fan of Electric Mary through sort of through Tommy Emmanuel. So when Tommy put out a record called Terra Firma with his brother Phil. I can't remember what year it was, but the single had a solo in the middle that I was like, who the hell is that? And what is that? And I could still pretty much play you that solo almost note for note as best as I could, but it was Jack Jones from Southern Sons.
Ah, right.
And so I got switched on to Jack through listening to this Tommy record. And I remember asking him about it and said, dude, that's Jack, that's the singer from Southern Sons, like Heart in Danger. That's that guy playing that solo. And he goes, yeah. And I'm like, and then Tommy goes, and get this, he didn't even know we were recording him.
Well, he was just noodling around.
He was just turning the amp on and getting a sound. He goes, and we got it. And I said, you're done. And he wanted to go again, but he goes, no, you're done, finished. That's the take. That's going on my record.
Oh,
Yeah. And I Jack would be able to validate that, but that was the story that Tommy told me. So imagine that. Imagine learning that and thinking, oh God, that's what you got to be able to do. Jeez.
Yeah.
So I got switched on to Jack Jones, Irwin Thomas at a young age, and then really wanted to pick his brain. So then Tommy constructed a gig where it was like Tommy and friends, and Jack came along and played, and I came along and played, and bless his cotton socks, our old mate Stewie Fraser, Chet, his nickname was Chet because he loved Chet Atkins so much. He came along and played, and I picked both of those guys' brains so much they would have. I'm sure I was annoying. I think I was 17 years old. And so I was switched on to Jack. And then when he joined Electric Mary a few years after that, or maybe it must have been in the early 2000s, around 2004 or something, they would play gigs at the Evelyn Hotel in Melbourne here, or the Ding Dong Lounge or whatever, like these cool little sticky floor pubs.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would go along and just get my ears melted and be like, God damn, that's loud. So yeah, and Pete Robinson, of course, you like the whole band. Like it was the original lineup, the original lineup of Electric Mary. So you had Venom on drums, and it was an experience to go and see a band playing, literally playing what you would consider traditional heavy rock, or traditional, very 70s inspired riff rock,
Yeah, yeah.
And both the guitar players, Pete Robinson and Jack, would take you on a clinic if you give them enough rope, and I would go away from those gigs. I've always been a bit of a sicko. Like I don't get, if I hear something I love, even if it's way over my head and I know I can't do it, I just get excited and inspired.
Yeah.
And I just want to go home and try and figure out just one piece of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm happy with that. I love that. I find that, exciting. Whereas I know a lot of other people go the other direction.
Yeah.
I can't play.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
that's a bummer that's the thing, because you should just try and take whatever you can get,
Yeah.
And big, what is it? Give nothing back.
Yeah.
The old pirate saying, steal and plunder and give nothing back,
Yeah.
No apologies. That's why I've got songs about that too. Like, one of my tunes called Finders Keepers is kind of about, suckers, I found this, I'm not giving it back.
So when you're on the road with Electric Mary, because that sound they have, like you've alluded to, it's an incredible sound. It's that the guitar sound is just amazing. There's nothing else like it. I know it's that 70s inspired, but it's more. It's supercharged, and it's hot rodded, and it's thicker, and it's deeper. There's just so much more going on there. It's a beast of a sound. It really is. It's a living beast of a sound.
That's a good way to describe it, yeah.
And it's got this texture and thickness to it that I
Mm.
don't think anyone else manages to get. There's
Oh,
something
really?
about the way you guys do it. And
Wow.
there's just something more going on. There's just
Thank you,
something
mate.
special.
Wow, thank you. That's high praise, man.
As someone like you do too, you try and dissect it and chase it and analyze it and what about this and what about that.
Mm.
I know a big part of it is obviously stage volume. That's where you get a lot of the magic when the valves are humming.
Yeah, yeah.
But what is it that is for you when you go, all right, I'm turning up to this gig. What's coming with you? What's
Ah,
the amp and the pedal and the guitar that you go, this is going to bring, this is the magic sauce?
I think that one, that's a 60, it's a 73 super bass.
A super bass. Oh,
Yeah, it's
okay.
an old super bass which I stumbled onto here in Melbourne at a shop called the Music Swap Shop in Carlton, and I was going to try out a pedal. So anyway, I to not to digress, I love that super bass, and it's had to have a master volume put on it
Right. Because
because
it was
the
too
first
loud.
couple of the first couple of times because you want to be able to turn them up so the preamps start to sag just a bit.
Yep.
And with the old Marshalls, I find you got to be really careful of how much sag because then if you've got anything in the front of it, they can get really spongy, like
Oh, right.
super squishy and not in a good way. And that doesn't work for riffs that have got to be punchy and on in the pocket.
Yeah.
You don't want to be hitting a string and it goes,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
still want to gonk on the note.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, so I love the old Marshalls, but I had Dave Ulbrich years and years ago build me, I think what he called a Stadium 120, which when 120 watt amp. Because the thing about Electric Mary, like you're talking about volume, right? I don't necessarily think it's just that. The reason that we have really loud amps is because we have to be able to get over the rhythm section, which is a three piece like guitar, drums, bass.
Yep.
When we're ripping a solo, you need a bit of headroom to
Oh,
get
the
above
push.
the yeah. So one of the secrets that I learned from Pete Robinson was you can get a pedal made by our mate Warwick Newman, who's like an amp tech to all of us local Melbourne guitar tragics. Um, and he's a wicked front of house guy, and he's a guitar player as well. But he mods Marshalls and amps and repairs. He's been through all of my amps and made sure they're healthy. And he's the amp doctor guru for a lot of us. He builds a little master volume circuit in that's really discreet into your amp, so that you can run the master wherever is good for your rhythm tone, and then
Oh,
you can goose it on the back. He puts a discrete little volume knob on the back so that you can. It's basically like a dial, so you can adjust how much you want to turn your master up.
wow. Okay.
So it's only controlling the power amp tubes basically. It's not pushing the preamp tubes any harder into distortion or saturation. It's just the big tubes get turned up louder, like you're turning the master up.
Right.
And so that little pedal goes, plugs into the back of the head, and you just hit the pedal, and it's like somebody's just walked up and turned your amp up for your solo, and then you kick it off, and it's
And it
turning your
drops
amp back
down
down
again.
to you. Because there's nothing worse than starting a solo and it's more gain than you wanted and less punch than you wanted, and it just doesn't feel right under the fingers. It gets too squishy. If you I find that when you get a Marshall or a breakup type amp up to its like little optimum little crunchy level,
Yep.
hitting it in the front end with a 10 dB or 20 dB boost just makes it floppy.
Interesting. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's a bit of a secret weapon that I learned from Pete Robinson. Um, and maybe that's my fault for running my amps too crunchy.
So you rely heavily on the amps, overdrive. There's no
Yeah.
no sort of thing of like, here's a pedal that's going to give me the sound,
Mm-hmm.
and the amp's going to give me the volume. You're very much saying that the sound that you're going to hear is largely the amp being pushed,
Sure.
and then
Well, within reason, there is pedals at the floor for me, and it's the same with Pete Robinson. So I do have like a Jesse Day, sorry, King Tone Duelist
yep.
that has a Blues Breaker drive pedal and a Tube Screamer drive pedal, and I love Tube Screamers. That's been my overdrive of choice my whole life. So I do use those, and I have fuzz pedals as well. But my thing is that I like to get the amp to that AC/DC kind of, You just want a little ja ja ja, little
Yeah.
bit of
Yep.
teeth on it just before the amp's going to start going fluff fluff fluff. Sorry, I can't do this for you. You
Yep.
dial it back a little bit from there and get your little your gang gang sound.
Yep.
And then if that's boostable, you still might need a little extra gain added to it. But I found with most, I don't have super duper, I don't have like a Jose mod on my Marshall. So I don't have a Marshall that has the 3 or 4 stages of gain or whatever. That's just an old one. So you're pretty much at the mercy of if you boost that sound, it's still not going to be very distorted
Yeah.
or
Yep.
sustaining. It's still just going to be a crunch sound. So I'll have a little overdrive on the board. But it's funny, even when I think I've got too much drive, Rusty will say, "Man, you've got a great clean sound there." So my version of too much drive and too much saturation in 70s Rockland is apparently still fairly
It's
clean.
still clean because it does. Both of you guys have. It's. I've tried to get that sound, and
Okay.
there's this thing that I can't get past because it's you've spoken about having too much gain, and it's more like this. It's the sound of muscle. That's what I reckon it is.
Mm,
Where you've got this. There's a like on certain amps, you've got to bring the gain up to get the body to come with it. Otherwise, they
sure.
can sound a bit thin.
Mm-hmm.
But the way you guys have it, it's like you've discovered this secret where you can have all the body, there's all this muscle, but there's none of the fizz from the gain. It's just pure muscle coming out.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, well, that's a thing that Rusty and I talk about a lot is not trying not to get that fizzy sound
Yeah, yeah,
because it's there in every pedal that you can turn on almost. Like
yeah,
there's a point in the drive knob, in the overdrive or the gain or something. There's a point where everything can get a little on the fizzy side.
yep,
And maybe the trick is trying to get the amp to sit at that little sweet spot so that you don't have to add as much from a dirt pedal.
yeah.
Uh,
Well, I
so
think you've
so an
nailed
old
it.
maybe that's my approach to it, and I
Yeah,
learned that through years and years of reading up about guys like Stevie Ray Vaughan, um, how he would run a tube screamer is kind of counterintuitive to how I would have done when I was a teenager, right? So when I'm 15-year-old Brett and I get a tube screamer because Tommy Emmanuel's got one and Stevie Ray Vaughan's got one and everyone used them, you'd
yeah,
get it in your room and go, oh, there's not that much distortion. So you
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
you'd turn the drive all the way up and then you get the level to a pleasant, unity gain for what your clean sound was. And then you step on the pedal and it's not too much louder. And then the tone would be like, oh, you can't turn the tone up too much past lunchtime, past noon.
yep.
It's like, oh, that's weird. So you're kind of rolling the tone back a bit. And that's not how Stevie ran his tubies at all. And it was, I think he had one that he might run that was a bit more gained up, but a lot of the times his tube screamer was almost an EQ pedal.
Oh,
So
wow.
he would run the drive off, the tone up quite high, and then the level would be cranked. So he wasn't
Oh,
adding any distortion to his amps. The amps were already starting to fail. But
yeah.
what the tube screamer almost, because how people complain about they've sucked bottom end.
Yes, yeah, yep.
Well, when you turn a super reverb up to 9, you want something to suck some of the bottom end out.
Oh, so that's where the tube screamer comes into play, where
Yeah.
normally with a Marshall, they don't have the bass. You're always chasing a bit more bass.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So there's all these little weird, like it's like how do you make an omelet? Like,
Yeah.
and the only way to find out is to get one of these amps and be in the room with it and turn it up and find
And
out what they
play.
feel like and play them. I remember the first time I played with Electric Mary, I was like, Jesus, you blokes are loud. It was like, well, I thought I had a Dumble clone that was 50 watt, and they're going, that's not, you're not going to be able to hear that. And it's a pretty punchy 50 watts, and I was using a 212 or something, and I think, and it was audible, but what I missed was when it was solo time, I couldn't hear myself.
Wow.
Yeah,
Jeez.
so the 50 watts was enough to get me in the rhythm section, but it wasn't enough to get me over the
To get
band
above it.
to solo. Yeah,
Because it's amazing. Like when, people talk about the Plexi sound, AC/DC is your benchmark.
sure.
They always say, oh, the AC/DC Plexi sort of crunch.
Hmm.
And then even I spoke to one of the guys that worked on the Screaming Jets first album.
Oh yeah, love the Jets.
And he said to me, oh, that first album was done with the 1987 Marshall Plexi style
Yeah, yeah,
heads. It's
yep,
like that's what we used.
yep.
But
They
your
sound great.
sound, yeah.
They
But
sound fantastic.
a lot of the times when you get in your head the AC/DC sound of
Mm,
just a Marshall, even Airborne, who was very much in that
great
space,
band. Yeah, cool.
it it seems to me sometimes, and you sort of feel like, oh, you just want to go and turn that gain up a bit. It just needs that little bit more. It's just a little bit not grunty enough.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and where and it's like, well, where's that happening? Because Electric Mary have done it.
yeah.
You guys are using similar amps, and you've got it. That first album from the Screaming Jets,
Has
that
that
had it
sound?
too.
Yeah.
It
I
had that more punch. It didn't sound like it was an AC/DC sort of crunch. It was like we're in that ballpark, but we've gone beyond it. We've thrown a supercharger on it.
yeah, a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
so I mean yeah, that's a really nice way to look at it. I'm always dancing a dance between how much is too much gain and how clean is too clean. It's like this weird little
yeah.
swinging pendulum thing. And I remember the General Electric record she had, and talking to Jack about it on the phone. He's like, "Man, that's the sound of a JCM 800 and a Plexi like hard panned.
Oh,
You know,
right.
playing the same riff or the same chord pattern or something, just like out really wide in the speakers. But one's a JCM 800, which is a bit more, maybe a bit more high end sizzly, and the Plexi is a little bit more spongy and a bit more cushy, you know."
Yep.
And that was I remember that as an early lesson of going, oh, what does that mean? And then when I got a pod kidney thing, I was like trying to find a way of creating
Of
that
getting that
sound
sound.
in an old Fostex like little 4-track recorder thing, trying to figure out how you did that. And what did Jack
Yeah.
talk about? He said JCM 800 over there, and I was trying to mimic it. And you just hear your heroes and your mates say certain things, and then you go try it, you know. And maybe that's one of the really cool things about this modeling era that we're in now, which I get a lot of little jabs from some of my mates on Instagram because they know I've been banging on about real amps and
Yeah.
tubes and stuff for a while. And but I use modeling, like I use it in the computer, I use it in the box, you know, when I'm recording. And I've got a fractal Ax8 that I toured with Pete for 2 or 3 years when we were on in ears. So there was not really much point, you know, if you got a good modeling setup. The thing that I find that's weird is sometimes you feel a tiny split second, a fraction of a second of latency.
Oh, really? So you pick up on that.
I did, and I remember, but it's not that it makes it unusable. I just feel it.
Just different. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but the thing is, the scary thing is the modeling's got that good now. Like it's
Yeah.
that good that in a lineup, if you had to do like, you know, the old Coca-Cola Pepsi taste challenge, like it's probably harder than it's ever been
Yeah. Yeah.
to pick the difference. And I
Yeah.
think that's probably one of the things that's good to talk about sometimes with gear and tone is that the stigma around amps are better and this and that. No, it's just a tool. They're just tools. And for a young kid who's maybe 15 right now, have at it. Go in and get all the modeling. Go through all the Dumble clones. You know, you can
Yeah.
never going to buy one of them for real because they're unobtainium now. It's like
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of
Yeah.
dollars. So go through all the different modeling ones and go, oh, I like that one. Oh, I don't like that one. And you just learn how to get your sounds as best you can.
Yeah.
Um, there's so many different ways of skinning a cat. There's heaps and heaps of different ways of getting a sound. So
It's like I think maybe the sweet spot is like what Friedman have done, where they've got the IRX,
mhm.
where it's got, you got all of the things you can plug into it and get straight out of it, but it's still got two valves in it. So
Oh,
there's
right.
the
Wow, that's a
organic
great
front
idea.
end and the
What a
back
great
end's
idea.
digital, and you can load a cab sim into it. I played one
Mm.
and it was good. It was good. I was expecting to walk out going, I have to take it. I have to buy it.
Right.
I didn't get that. I liked it. It was really good,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like this is coming with me.
Gotcha. And so
Um,
maybe sometimes those things, because the technology is still kind of developing,
yeah.
sometimes it might be a matter of if you had have had the time or there had been the opportunity to take it with you and try it for a week, you might have dialed in something and gone,
Yeah.
there it is.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, rather than 10 minutes in the little cube in the
Sure,
back of
exactly.
the
So
pedal
it's
shop. Yeah.
exactly. Sometimes these things are tricky. They're a tricky find.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I nearly gave myself extra tinnitus on top of the stuff I'm living with, trying to dial in the fractal for 3 or 4 weeks, and before we went out on the road when I first started using it. And
Oh, wow.
I was on the phone to Brett Kingman, thanks Brett, and Joshy Allen, who he'd filled in. He brought the fractal in. He was filling in for me on a TV spot with Pete, and he brought his backpack and he goes, "Got me rig, mate." And had his fractal in the back. And I was like, "Oh, cool." And I had a super reverb there, but guess what? I had the super reverb turned up to 2 and a bit, and
Oh,
I
geez.
couldn't get the amp up to its operating volume because we were in a small room, and you got to be sensitive to the fact that you're supporting an artist, and you can't be like mowing him down going, well, this is where my amp sounds good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so if I had the fractal, I could have dialed up that super reverb, got it up to 4.5 in the sim where the amp's already starting to crunch, and
Yep.
then pull a few pedals in front of it in the simulator. And then you just have to suffer through some of the, I don't know, maybe it's an EQ thing. Sometimes you hear little EQ scoopy things in sims that you go, it doesn't sound like my amp's behind me.
Yep.
It's that weird thing of like, and maybe it's more practical than EQ based. It's more like if you get too much of your amp just coming from a monitor where your vocals normally come from, it's just a bit unsettling after a while.
Oh,
I
right.
when I was running when we went off in-ear monitors and went to stage monitors again, I had to ask for one to be behind me so that it felt like my amp was back there.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And
That's
then you get the
amazing.
other thing where the first time I used the fractal, I had like a plexi, I had a Vox, I had like a blackface Fender, like a Vibroverb or something. And
Everything was in there.
yeah, and I was changing between them, and the front of house guy goes, "What the hell are you doing?" And I was like, I've just got these amps. And he goes, "Can you just dial one of them?"
Yeah. Well, that
Like,
that was Dave Friedman's thing when he about his IRX is like pro guys want to have all the flexibility, but they don't want to be dialing things and sitting there for 2 hours trying to get the sound. They just want to plug
yeah,
in, get that amp sound and go.
that's what it is, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should be 6 strings and your ideas, and if you get it too caught up in all of the stuff in between, it sort of, yeah. And I've admittedly even had pedal problems because I've had a pedal board for years that I put together, um, that I haven't been as good at the upkeep on the maintenance, and some of the power cables have gone dodgy, and some of the things, and
Oh,
so I've sort of been forced to entertain, going back to uh, using the fractal with Pete Murray on the road, because it's kind of not forced, but like encouraged, I should say,
yeah.
because it's less hassle and
So practical.
it's more consistent. Yeah, all of
Yeah.
that stuff. So everything's a tool for the trade, and there's ups and downs to all of it.
I do think it's good that the space still exists for bands like Electric Mary. Well, for someone like me to turn up and still hear and see what
Mm.
you're expecting. There's still the Marshall, there's still the big sound coming off. You've got that feeling.
Right on. Yeah, that's cool to hear, man. I feel exactly the same way. It's a special thing. I joke about it with my buddies, my guitar mates and stuff, and go, man, it's like, how many other opportunities is a guy going to get to take 100 watt plexi or 100 watt
Yeah.
plexi clone and get it up to volume and give it a nudge? And I always try to angle my speaker box either into the middle or out to the edge, so that, because I just see people at the front sometimes and think, you poor buggers. I used to put earplugs, a little thing of earplugs at the front of the stage. And you go, there's earplugs right there. Just don't, like, look out. Like, remember Hendrix would
Yeah.
start his gigs and he'd go, "It's gonna get loud," and he put his fingers on his ears, like, it's like, yeah, look out, kids.
No,
Yeah.
that it's unreal. The end of Electric Mary.
Oh,
Is
mate.
that sort of do you feel like is that a thing of like, yep, I feel like we've done everything, we've went out, we've done Bathurst, we've won, we've cemented our position, or is it a thing of like, this is a shame that it's coming to an end?
I think it's probably a little combo of the two. I think it feels like it, in some ways, it feels like it makes sense for me personally. I guess the because I really felt like I was joining an establishment when I joined
Yeah.
Electric Mary, and so I'll always cherish the fact that it felt like, as a guitarist in this country, it was kind of a really respected spot to be in that band next to Pete Robinson, to have a chair as a guitar player in a band like that that's so guitar driven.
Yep.
I held it in such high regard. So in that respect, it's kind of been somewhat part of my own identity, of my, even though there's a lot of people that don't even know that I play in the band. Sometimes people don't make it,
Really?
yeah, which is okay too. That's totally
Yeah.
fine. But for me personally, my identity is in the things that I've given my time and energy to, and Electric Mary is a big one. But yeah, sometimes people would
Oh.
come up to me and tell me how much they love the band, and my mates will be sitting around going, "Are you going to say it?" And I'm like, "Nah."
Well, that's interesting. It's funny because I was talking to Gary Moore's son about this, and it's when you
Wow, I
find
love
out
Gary Moore.
about someone,
Mm,
you tend to that becomes your default point. So I was talking to him about because for me, the Gary Moore I love is the JCM 2000 high gain Gary Moore, where it's
mm,
blues riffs, but it's heaps of gain.
yeah.
And I heard Brett Steckel talk about how for him Gary Moore is the early days,
Oh,
plexi Gary Moore, low gain.
Eric Steckel.
Is it Eric Steckel?
Yeah,
Yeah, Eric Steckel, the blues
yeah,
guy, the
yeah,
American
yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he plays Nag. Yeah, you said Brett Steckel, but yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
Eric. But
Eric
it's
Steckel. Eric Steckel. For him, Gary Moore is the early low gain. He's like, oh, I like hearing Gary play on his plexi. And I was talking
right.
to Jack about it, and I said, is there a sound for you that defines your old man? And he's like, no, not really. And I said, I think it's when you come on, when you jump on board. And for me, I jumped on board Gary Moore when he did the Blues Alive album.
Yep.
So for me, that's my
Wicked album.
default. And then
Great
up
album.
from there. So when I hear less than that or older than that, less gain or an
Uh-huh.
older recording, to me, it's lacking. And it's
Right.
funny. So for me, my association to you is Electric Mary.
Right.
So that's just that instant sound in my head is when I
Yeah.
think of you. That's the
Yeah.
sound I
Oh,
hear.
that's a gracious thing. Yeah, it's like where you jump on with somebody. It's like
Yeah,
where you
and it's
found them.
just
Yeah.
that's my default position. And then when I listen to a lot of your stuff, your guitaring, um, like it's like it's the playing is unbelievable, like
Oh, thank
intimidatingly
you.
unbelievable.
Oh
But
man.
in my mind, it's like I go, oh, geez, that would be unreal if that was through a Les Paul and a Marshall. That exact same riff.
Yeah, you put it where you put it where you want to put it. Like, could I just get that and
Yeah,
do that? Yeah.
exactly that. Yeah. Can I just hear this exact thing? Because that riff that you posted on Instagram, and you said how the boys said it was a bit too
Stevie Ray.
Stevie Ray. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw that Doug Aldridge said it sounded perfect to me.
Oh,
Um,
right. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. That was
yeah.
nice of him to do that.
And
That
I
was
and
really
I thought,
nice.
geez, that riff sounded unbelievable, but
Yeah.
it just
Thanks, Doug.
it was like if that to me was a Marshall higher gain Les Paul or humbuckers, let's just say.
Right on. Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and then you go, all of a sudden you've merged, what it was, what you're thinking, and it becomes something else.
Yeah, that's right. I was a bit hell bent on using my toys on that session, and my 64 Strat that I'm very, very grateful that I was able to acquire at a reasonable enough rate that a working musician could afford. And it took me a year to pay it off from the gentleman I bought
Oh,
it from.
wow.
But it was enough that my partner and I were like, okay, this is a dream you want to have, you want to. I just really wanted to use that guitar on as much as I could get away with on the record, and
Oh, gee. And what were you plugged into when you did that?
that particular solo was through the Marshall, that the one
Oh,
that didn't
really?
the one that didn't make the record. And
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
look, in defense of the band and the guys that were a little bit apprehensive about it being on the record, I kind of understood, to be honest. Like I got it. I kind of got it.
Yeah.
And I didn't mind. I kind of love the idea of going, all right, well, I'll try a different thing and see if I can make that work. I kind of like that challenge, and I do feel like it's on a song called "Give Me Love." So that's my outro, the outro solo on "Give Me Love." But to give a little
Oh.
tiny bit more context to it, I was being a little bit of a pest because because, and this is just being completely honest, right? When we were in pre-production in the rehearsal studio working on these songs, I felt like that song "Give Me Love" was a poppy kind of hard rock song.
Okay.
It's got this big, it's got a big deep purple, no, 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 no. It's got a big riff,
Yep.
but it had a pop sensibility to it that I was just like, oh, maybe we should just not have guitar solos on this song. Imagine saying that in a band like
Yep.
Electric Mary.
Yeah, you'd get strange looks.
And so I had this little niggle in the back of my mind that if we were going to have a solo, it shouldn't be the outro of the song. It should be in the middle because it's more of a pop sort of song, you know. Like, and I was like,
Right.
so I was being a pain in the ass. Really, is the truth of it. And because I lost the war, and the two there were not only was there one solo at the end of the song, but there's two. Traditionally, that happens a lot in our band, and mine was the last one. I kept on opting out and going, I don't have to play the solo. It can just be a Pete Robinson solo. And they go, no, 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 we got to do it. The key change, and then you come back in, and I just kept on losing battle after battle. So I just was a smart ass and was like, no worries. I'm just going to bring my Strat, a tube screamer, and I'm going to honk through whatever amp sounds the best. And so I was being a naughty little kid that didn't get to have his way.
Didn't get what you wanted. Yep.
And my internal mission was to make it sound like I was able to, not that I, my in maybe I shouldn't say this, but my internal mission was to make it sound like I was able to bring him back for a day and give Stevie his guitar and go, can you just play on this song for me? Because I'm
Yeah.
I'm in a bad mood. Can you just play on it?
Yeah.
And so I put this boom, this big reiki, super. It was when I did it, I was like, whoa, what was that just came out?
Really? You surprised
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah. I was like, man, I just had a mood and I had a little intent in my mind and I was just like rolling with it. And maybe it's not the most perfect solo and it has little isms in it that, people might go, I wouldn't have put that on an Electric Mary thing. So I understood, like I did do something a little bit out of the box from what we would normally do.
Yeah.
And I understood why it maybe didn't fit. So it's cool, and it's had its own little life after that,
Yeah. 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 Definitely. Yeah.
which is fine.
Well, I guess then that gives birth to the solo album that's coming.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
right on,
and
man.
the single that's out. So now it's all on you. You are your advisor, your funder, your everything. It's all
Yeah.
on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And
Chonky accountant. Yeah.
and is that creative freedom now feel good or does it feel scary? That you don't have a wall to bounce off and have someone say, no, no, why don't you try this? It's all like, well, this
Yeah.
is what's in my head. Let's put this on tape.
Yeah, that's a good question. Absolutely, it's liberating. Like not being part of a collective, it's a different thing. It's sort of almost like you don't notice it until you look back at the body of work and go, okay, I got 10 or 13. It's 13 songs that I'm looking to put out as a record. And you look at that and go, wow, that all just literally came out of me sitting in a studio on my own or here at home on my own writing, just playing the what if game. Like, what if I had a song that felt like that vibe and but I had something to say? And then I found out once I started chasing it, then a bunch of stuff just fell out lyrically. And I got my songbook here that's just chock full of word a day toilet paper. And it was the feeling of not having to bounce it off people didn't really occur to me until I looked at the end, like looked at it as a body of work and went, okay, there's still some work to be done on the tracks, but wow, that all came out super easy. Well, I shouldn't say
Wow.
that because it hasn't been easy, but
But
there was
it's
a bit of,
flowing.
yeah, there was a bit
There's
of
an
a, yeah,
organic,
thank
yeah.
you. Yeah, there was a flow. I had a flow and I enjoyed that process. I enjoyed being in that state, which was nice. Not that it's not flowy being in a band. It's just a different experience.
Yeah.
And it's scary as well, man, because you kind of go, well, I did this because I liked it.
Yeah.
I didn't do this to impress anybody. I didn't do this to try and get anybody else's approval. I didn't do it to
This
think.
is you.
Yeah, I didn't think about it like, oh, is anybody who listens to Electric Mary going to like this? Or is anybody who knows me through my career with Pete Murray going to like this? I didn't think about anything other than making music that I thought was cool, purely because I know from experience that if you're going to go out and do something, you better like it because it's not easy work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that an hour and a half or hour that you spend on stage has got to be worth the other 23 hours of the day.
Yeah. and
So
the
that's
sacrifices too. I mean, being away and
yeah.
it's not an easy 9 to 5 job security. No, 4 weeks holiday a year and 6 7 days sick leave. It's not that sort of a gig.
No, it's just roll your sleeves up and do the work. And I mean, you know, it's not necessarily physical labor. I'd learned that doing my video clip the other day, digging holes in the middle of the app, in the middle of nowhere, and then refilling them back in. It's like blisters and stuff and cramped hands and cramped forearms. It's like, man, people that do heavy, hard duty manual labor every day, much respect. But it's hard in the other respect of like sacrifice away from your family,
Yeah,
un, un ungodly hours. Like sometimes you're up until 1 o'clock in the morning, whether it's an insomnia situation from a
yeah.
lifetime of being a musician, or you had work to do up until that point of the night, and you've got a 5 o'clock lobby call the next morning. Like on the last tour that we did with the band over Christmas, I'm in the back of the van with my laptop and a hard drive, and it's heating up in my lap, and I'm trying to point the aircon down and hold the bottom of the laptop up because
To cool it down.
I'm working on edits on the record and trying to get stuff together so I can send it off to mix. Like it's just
Jeez.
round the clock sometimes, because now like you said at the start, we are our own publicists. We are
Yeah.
our own TV. We run our own TV channels. It's
It's
insane.
all you. Everything's on you.
Pretty much.
It's
Yeah.
it's an unusual feeling, and certain people can do it. You've got to have discipline, self motivation, and I guess you've got to figure out ways to keep things in check. Your health, your anxiety. There's so many things, and that goes for anyone that's doing their own gig. It doesn't matter if you're a plumber or you're a musician.
Hmm.
There's something about people that can do it, and
Yep.
it's not for everyone.
No, that's right. I always think those sorts of things when I see students who have got a lot of promise, or young artists that are coming up, or young players that are doing really well. Like there's a young guy named Hamish Anderson who he and I have been kind of conversing back and forth online, and you see the ones who you see lifers. You know when you see a lifer, you're like, okay, you've got the bug. Okay, I get it.
Yeah,
And you go, okay, well, all the other stuff will take whatever toll it's going to take, and they'll learn through their own journey. But you just see the ones that will stay. You can tell, and I think maybe that's what I would have been like as a kid. Like somebody would have seen me playing at 15 or 16 and go, oh yeah, he's hooked. You know,
yeah, yeah.
um, so
Is
yeah.
do you struggle because this is all you now, and the
Mm,
songs are all you, and obviously they're like most musicians, they're personal. They're going to be built from events and feelings.
yeah.
So when you're in a band like Electric Mary, or you've got this, it feels a collective because it does feel like a collective when
Mm,
when you hear that.
absolutely, yeah, for sure.
And now it's all on you. Is there a nervousness about a message that you're putting out in those songs or talking about? Does that ever weight on you as a musician?
100%. I remember, yeah, if yeah, absolutely, something to say, and how are you going to say it, and
Yeah.
what is it actually communicating, and all that stuff. And so, yeah, I've been mindful of that for a long time with regards to I'm a huge fan of good songwriting. Like I'm a huge fan of Jackson Browne. I'm a huge fan of Sheryl Crow, Willie Nelson. Um, the list is long. But the angles that you see things from. John Mayer I'm a fan of his writing. I always liked how he managed to find different angles to talk about different subjects that were pretty common, but his angles were great. Like
Yeah.
how are you going to say what it is that you need to say? And so I don't know if I've constructed great results with that. All I know is I've been really honest with what I had inside at the time, and it's probably shaped up like a bit of a breakout record. It's almost like a inside wants, like, let me out of something. Like I need to make a change. I need to change, and it's not necessarily musically. It's more so just I think I'm just talking about coming out of maybe stepping out into the spotlight myself. A lot of the songs are very much based on buckling your shoes up, pulling your socks up and let's go. Like Real Piece of Work, the first single, is very much that. And I was really chuffed that when I sent the songs sorry, I'm digressing a little, but when this comes back to your point, did I think about what I was singing about and what I'm trying to say? Is one of the things that I was lucky enough to be put in touch with Chris Whipper-Layton, the drummer from Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble, and also Kenny Wayne Shepherd and the Archangels and multiple projects.
Wow.
He's in a band at the moment with I think it's called The Jungle Show with Billy Gibbons and Jimmy Vaughan. He plays with so many cool people. And he checked out the stuff and he said, look, I'll listen to your stuff, and if I'm into it, I'll do it. We kind of got hooked up through a friend, and and he checked out the songs and said, cool tunes. And then when we finally talked, he actually said, which I'm super grateful for, he said, man, I really love your voice and I love what you're singing about. Let's do this.
Geez, that's a really good compliment, isn't it?
Yeah. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. So maybe I wrote something that was okay. I was like, maybe this will be okay. I don't know. Because you're always filled with doubt as much as you're filled with a bit of excitement that you wrote a song or you wrote a bag of songs. You kind of got, go hand in hand. Self-doubt and confidence is kind of a weird balance,
Yeah, they can take daily turns.
Yeah. Minute by minute. But yeah, the fact that he resonated with what I was singing about was really special to me, because I'm like, okay, great. Well, that's a little thing I can stick in my back pocket that I've done okay,
Yeah. Well, I think I've listened to that single a few times.
Cool.
And being honest with you, I feel nervous when I listen to it because the playing is so precise, and it's like I've put myself in those shoes, and there'd be 1,000 mistakes because it is your tone is so pure.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's
Thanks, man.
I feel nervous listening to it. I was like,
really?
yeah, it just gets me nervous. Like, whoa, I feel like you'd be recording it so many times because there'd be one slip up or one note didn't ring perfect, but I can't hear a mistake. It's
oh, no kidding,
pitch perfect. Well, everything that I've heard in it
wow,
is
thanks,
pitch
man.
Perfect. Every string,
there's
every hit.
There's some mistakes in there, I'm pretty sure. But if that's maybe we owe Gavin Parker, my mixing engineer and who mixed and mastered it, thank you for him to be able to blend everything together so that it glues nicely.
Well, look, yeah, and don't discredit your playing because precise is the best word for it. It's just
wow,
it's just got
cool.
surgical precision in how every note is rung out. So I think you've done an outstanding job on it.
Thank you, brother. Well, that means a lot. Thank you so much, man. I guess, yeah. And I mean, I did have to do it over and over again in some aspects. I'll tell you the aspects that were quick. The two solos and the rhythm guitar was pretty quick. Okay. So Whipper played drums to those solos, and I could have gone back in and changed them, but because he played drums to them and everything sort of grooved, I didn't want to change anything. But what took me a minute or two extra was kind of getting the vocal exactly the way I wanted it, and learning little lessons along the way of like, I sang through a bad microphone, but you get stuck in demoitis and you think you get a pretty good vocal take. And when you get to the mixing stage, maybe a note might come back saying, oh, the mic itself is distorting. It's not clipping in the session, but it's actually, there's some distortion inherent in the microphone.
Oh, wow.
And so I actually, I was in the middle of, I think we'd been touring with Pete and my voice was pretty tired. I had to get up in the morning and before the D-Day of like, it's already mixed and stuff, I came back downstairs and sang it again with a little cup of tea and some honey and had a bit of a scratchier throat. And so the vocal took a little bit of extra effort for me to get it over the line. But I'm really happy with it. I'm really proud of how it sits. And that's the other thing that's new for me too, is really learning from producing a record myself of like, once you get into the layers of like, even if it's only a track like Piece of Work's basically a trio with a little Leslie wobbly guitar on the side, every little thing has something to do with the pocket. And when you're talking about a shuffle, it's everyone in the mix has got their own little version of what that swing and shuffle will be, and then the vocal has to shuffle exactly the right way. And if you get too bop shawali wali bop if you get too little like barbershop quartet with how you're leaning on the shuffle vocally, it gets really weird. So there's
Right.
these, you kind of got to relax into a different sort of frame of mind sometimes when you're cutting the vocals and not get too hell bent on sticking certain grooves and things. But it's a landmine, I'll tell you.
I
There's
can
landmines
imagine, yeah.
everywhere.
And then even when you're hearing it back and in the mixing, and you just you'd get that. Oh, well, what about this? What about that? What about this? And then when you've heard something so many times over, you just sometimes have to go away
Yep.
and come back to it. And then even sometimes I'll dial in a setting and on a guitar amp, and you go, "Yeah, that sounds really good." And then you pick it up the next night and you go, "How did I think that sounded really good? That sounds
Yeah,
odd."
our ears change so much. And I
Yeah,
do you find I find that it happens with tempo too. I can listen to a song on a given any given different day, and it'll sound faster or slower.
yep, yeah.
You know,
Yep, it's strange that you sort of questioning what's changed or what's wrong or yeah.
and then
Why
I
did I
think it's
hear it different?
yeah, maybe it's like the Matrix. There is no spoon, or
Yeah,
we're the ones who change. Like the kid that talks to Neo says, what you have to realize is there is no spoon, and then it's us that bends, not the spoon. Like he looks like he's bending the spoon, but it's actually us that bends. I
yeah,
think that happens, and maybe it's a good sign of a good chosen tempo or a good, you know, like when you get something right in the area where it probably should naturally sit, then on any given day it can sound faster or slower because you kind of got it right. Maybe I hope.
yeah. And how long? So the first single's out.
Huh.
How long until you're hoping to have the album?
Well, that's a good question too. If it was up to me, the album would have come out at the same time as single one because
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to put the body of work out. But there's still a few tracks that need a little bit of producing and some replacements and some. I want to get some other singers in to do some BVs because it's always me singing BVs, and I don't think that's always the best from a mixing standpoint or just an overall sound. So there's just a few
Yep.
little dribs and drabs that still need doing. So that wasn't possible anyway. But I think in this day and age, I keep getting recommendations. You have to release singles.
It seems
Um,
to be the way, doesn't it? It's what everyone
yeah.
does. Like they at least do three of them before an
Uh-huh.
album comes. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it sounds like I'm giving myself a pat on the back, but I'm struggling to choose three. I feel like I have, more than that in the tank as far as songs that could stand up as a single.
Yeah.
And the other thing too now is what is a single like? I think I don't want to say it like this, but I think the actual truth is that music has almost become content.
Hmm.
I didn't make my music with the intent of it being that at all. I made it like I made my record for 15-year-old me that would be crying on the floor listening to Riviera Paradise, wishing that Stevie hadn't got in that helicopter. Like I made my record for 15-year-old Brett.
Yeah.
But I think in this climate, it's almost like the snowball happens from consistent releasing,
Yeah.
as far as I can tell from all the advice I've been getting. So I guess I have to play that game. I don't want to wait too long to do the second single and the third single. I don't want to do the traditional 8 weeks or 6 to 8 weeks. I want to kind of nudge it closer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair enough.
Because
Yep.
I just want to share the music and get out there and play. Like I've been sitting on these songs for long enough now, so I'm really itchy to get them out.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Well, is it a case of because you're going to do that tour with Pete Murray where you're up front first?
yes,
Is it ideal that you have more of them out, while that tour is happening than having less of them out, isn't it?
that would have been very ideal, mate.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I found out the hard way that deadlines get blown out and
Yeah.
things happen. And I was lucky enough earlier in the year to play some gigs with the Bad Loves, and that took a chunk of time,
Oh, wow.
which was awesome fun. It was great to play with the band and get to know Michael and get to play those tunes because I listened to that band a lot when I was younger.
Yeah, me too. Yep.
Yeah, great music and great, just cool tunes and bluesy infused, good songwriting and yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, so I blinked and 3 weeks disappeared and I'd missed my first deadline and then other things happen. People have lives and other commitments and you kind of can't get everything lined up and so anyway, it would have been amazing to get more songs out, but that's just not the way the cookie crumbled. So I think it'll be more likely that by the end of that tour, maybe 3 or 4 of them will be out.
Yeah. Yep.
maybe possibly more, but I think it's at the moment I'm just still sitting in the joy of getting the first one away. We may have tripped over a little bit of not having all the ducks in a row, and there's a lot of working parts. I'm lucky
Oh
to
yeah.
have a good little team around me. My little sister's a graphic designer, and one of my best mates is helping manage me and try and good luck to him trying to manage this scatterbrain. But he's a really good businessman and loves music and as well, and so it's trying to get as much help as we can within the tiny team that I've got to get everything rolling, and I think it's just about realistic expectations with time, man. That's
Yeah.
really what it comes
Yeah.
down to. So
I know you always you always want to achieve more than you really can with less time than you really, you should be allowing more. It's just
yeah,
always the way.
yeah, and that's the old joke, like do you want it great and cheap or great and
Yes.
fast, like not
Yeah.
possible,
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it's exactly right. And is the plan then to take it over to like somewhere, like US based?
I'd
Obviously,
love that. That's a massive dream of mine, man. Yeah, I'd love that. Sorry to cut you off,
yeah.
but yeah, yes.
Yeah. Well, because to me, I feel like that's where it would be ultimately really appreciated too. There'd be a
Oh,
lot of
cheers.
people over there that would really jump on that and it would resonate with.
Thank you, mate. Yeah, well, I guess that's as much of a compliment as it is as a puzzle for me to figure out, because I think getting there right now is there's nothing that happens fast, let
Yeah.
alone getting a visa and being able to go over and organize stuff. And that's one of the other lessons I'm learning, mate. For anyone out there that's listening, that's like myself as a guitar player or an artist that's getting their stuff out, people are so far in front of where we are or where I am to get booked. Like the reality of it is a lot of things are booked 18 months in advance, festival lineups, and some of that stuff's already
Wow.
signed, sealed, and delivered. So you kind of
Jeez.
have to get rolling, and so that's one of the reasons why we kind of just went, let's just get the first single out, you know, and
Yeah.
let's get going so that people can at least hang their hat on something,
Yeah.
and let's roll straight into single two, single three, single four, single five. To hopefully then start, maybe, if I'm lucky enough that anybody hears some quality in it and wants to book me for things, I'll be tickled pink, mate.
Yeah. Oh, look, I'm sure they will. I'm sure wants to pair you up with someone else and do a run of even small tours across
Yeah, mate.
Nashville and places like that. That's
Yeah.
I'm sure they would just lap it up. They'd love it.
Any opportunity to get to the States. I haven't been back since I used to go there every year with Tommy, when I was a kid, 19, 20, 21, 22, and I'd love to get back over there. I love the people, man. Like I personally resonate really incredibly with the way they are. They're so open and forthcoming with emotion, and it's just how I am. Like, I'm an
Oh,
emotional
right.
guy. I remember the first time I played a solo, we were playing a blues, Tommy and I, somewhere in like Louisville, Kentucky, in like a
Wow.
in a high school auditorium, right? It's like, nice seats and everything, but it's just Tommy and I and a couple of DIs into the PA. And he threw me a solo in Stevie's Blues, and we're playing along, and I start playing this solo, and everybody gave a standing ovation before I got through the first round. Like, I didn't even make it through a
Wow.
12 bar, and people were standing up. And I looked at him, and he goes, "I told you."
Wow.
It's like, he goes, "It's different, right?" And I'm like, "What is going on?"
Jeez.
And he,
That's great. That's unreal, isn't it? I mean, I find in Australia it's so hard. Good talent doesn't get appreciated. It doesn't help.
mm,
Radio doesn't really support our own very much.
mm,
And it's just so hard for good talent to take that next step.
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, there's a bit of a movement at the moment to try and make radio more. There's a higher percentage of Australian
and
original.
it rightfully should be. Absolutely,
Yeah,
100% it should be. Yeah.
yeah. I think it's a good thing that there are younger bands now. I don't know the names of them all, because I do see them when I'm scrolling past the plethora of people on Instagram, and there's this kind of little movement happening where it looks like younger guys, like, whether they're Americans or Aussies, that are doing, like, whether you could talk about Greta Van Fleet and,
Yep.
split the
With
room in
Dirty
half
Honey.
with, yeah,
Yep.
Dirty Honey, that's the band. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so
Yep.
much. Sorry about my memory. Yeah, exactly. Bands like that that are really making a good push for
Yeah.
riff rock,
Yeah. Blues
blues
based.
blues
Yeah.
based, but it's got a rock edge or like a
Yep.
Zeppelin-y edge, and I don't know. I just think that
Yeah.
that's the coolest thing ever.
I agree. It's the best sound in the world. It's the best format in the world.
Yeah, right on, dude. And it's like, yeah, but it's encouraging to see, the next generation. You're seeing it a lot now as well with guitar. Like, you'll see these young. I don't even know that. I think is it Ali Vandenbell, and then there's Grace. Is it Grace Bowers? Like these young, they like, to me they look like they've just come out of high school, and they're shredding and burning these blues things, and like it's like, man, this is cool again.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's like it.
definitely.
Yeah, it's the cool kids doing it, man. Yeah, I think blues is always that's the cool thing about blues. I think it's been almost given a weird, I don't know, stigma. I keep saying stigmas, but it's almost been a dirty word. Like if you see, man, that sounds like a bad thing to say, but it's like it has
Like
this
it's an
like,
older thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But if
Yeah.
you listen to Van Halen, he's playing blues lines in amongst what he's doing as well,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
then ripping your mind in half with a tapping classical thing or a
Yep.
or a line that he's created, and that you're like, how far do you have to stretch to get that? And
Yeah.
like, but there's bluesiness in there. Like
Yeah.
he's not he there's not an he's not ignoring the blues. And
Yep.
he quoted that Eric Clapton was one of his biggest influences, and you listen to AC/DC, and sure, you can hear the blues, but they jumped it up another level as well. And it's like, it's kind of like angry Chuck Berry.
Yeah. 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 That's a good way of
Um,
putting it. Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
But that's almost an oversimplification as well. That's almost like but it's just how we as human beings figure out a way to describe stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
We
Yeah.
join stuff together. So, like, it's for too long, it's kind of been given this um, old hat that it has to wear, but I think it's sort of shifting. There seems to be a little bit of a paradigm shift now where it's kind of the blues is cool again, or it's kind of current again because of guys and girls out there that are really kind of ripping it up and giving it
Yeah.
what
A new
for.
lease of life. Yeah.
Yeah, it's wicked. It's really
Yeah.
cool.
No, it is really good. Yeah. Well, I wish all the success for you. I really hope that it kicks off,
Thank you, brother.
worldwide for you because
Oh, mate.
it's a deserving sound that hopefully the world picks up and appreciates, and you can
Thanks, man.
jump on your plane and head over to the States hopefully and start touring.
Yeah, I'll just flap my arms really hard. No, I appreciate it very much, mate. Thank you very much, for the good wishes. And look, all I can do is the best I can at picking up what other people had put down. I'm just trying to honor my heroes and honor the music that came before me that means the most, and
Yeah.
doing it wholeheartedly and with good spirit. That's all. I can't really do much more than that, and the rest will be what it'll be.
Look, I think for a Stevie Ray fan, I mean, I can only look at things from the way that I would look at something as a Billy Thorpe fan. That if
Mm,
someone was making that sound, and I haven't heard, I was thinking the other night, I haven't heard Oopa Purdue since 2007 when he died. And that's
mm.
coming up now nearly 20 years ago.
Wow, man, we're getting on.
And you just, time just is marching forward. And you think about,
Yeah.
I must have seen him live 50, 60 times.
Wow.
And that sound meant everything to me, and it stopped then.
Yeah.
And there'll be a Stevie Ray fan, or there'll be fans that hear that magic in your songs,
Wow,
and
man.
that's going to mean the world to them because they're hearing and feeling that sound.
That's what I hope. You can only hope, like you do something for the right reason. I would hope so. That's a really nice sentiment, mate. I hope so. I
Yeah,
hope
no, I'm
so.
sure it's going to mean the world to people. It to the true fan, which is who you made it for. It's going to mean everything to them.
Good on you, brother. Well, here's hoping, hey. You know what? I should say thank you to anybody who's listening to this who are followers of mine, or people that have jumped on board, because I'm super lucky that out of the people that have jumped on and been checking out what I've been doing, I haven't had anyone be super negative, or anything too bad, to be perfectly honest. Like, anything that was a small bump in the road happened to be because of a trigger, because I've grown up in a music industry here in Australia where it's tall poppy-ish. So anytime you sound too much like Tommy Emmanuel or too much like Jimi Hendrix or too much like Stevie Ray or too much like whoever,
Or even AC/DC, people are there to,
they're there to chop you down really quickly, and
Yep.
more power to Airborne for just leaning into it. Hey,
Yeah.
and you know what? They're not just AC/DC as well.
No, they're not at all.
There's plenty of Aussie rock DNA that stems way past the young
Yeah.
brothers in that band. And you know what? They just hit the throttle. They just foot to the floor and don't care. And that's,
Yeah.
you know what? That's how you do it.
Yeah. Well, Brett, I want to thank you, firstly for coming on, giving
No
up your
worries.
time and your story and divulging everything that we've spoken about and
Yeah,
putting
I'll
your
see
heart
you
and
in-
soul on the table.
I'll see you in court. It's my
But
pleasure, mate.
I also want to thank you too for the work with Electric Mary.
Bro.
Because the certain things resonate with certain people and they mean the world to them, like we spoke about. And I know with Electric Mary, I've often explained it to people like it's a musician's band. You've got to be into it to understand it. And once you do, it means the world to you.
Oh man, that's really sweet.
And your contribution with them, that sound, I'll often listen to it and pick whose solo is who whenever
Right
you're hearing
on.
it. It really is a masterpiece. You're going to leave behind a legacy of beautiful guitaring work that few others will rival, no matter
Man.
how much time is between the next albums.
That's amazing, mate. Thank you so much for saying so. That really get me emotional. It's a special thing that's resonated with you, man. I really appreciate that. Dude, thanks so much.
Thank you very much for checking out the show. If you did like it and have the opportunity, please do leave a 5-star review on your podcast player. It does help others find the show. If you want to find out more information about this episode, the guest, or even the other episodes that are on offer, head over to bumpingintothatsound.com.au. Find the episode page, and I always do my best to list follow-up links and details that make it easy for you to find out more. Thanks again for stopping by, and I'm looking forward to bumping into you next time.